Saying Danganronpa is a weird as hell franchise is an understatement. Saying Danganronpa V3 is the weirdest of the bunch is an even bigger understatement. But saying that Danganronpa V3 is not only one of the most brilliant games in the series, but one of the most brilliant games I've ever played, now that's where things get a little frisky. For those of you who are unaware, Danganronpa is a video game franchise that's part of the visual novel genre, basically meaning that story is the biggest focus and gameplay is either very brief or consists of just making decisions in the plot. And the main premise with Danganronpa is that every game is a killing game. A bunch of high schoolers are trapped, in this case inside a school, and the only way to get out is to murder another student and get away with it. So clearly there's a lot of death, betrayal, and hours of myself crying in a corner over the death of my favorite characters, but you know, it's fine. And it's been a long time coming, but we finally got Danganronpa V3, the third entry in the series, and I got it day one. I mean, how could I not? Besides Persona 5, this was my most anticipated game of the year, and with a year as consistent as 2017, that's saying something. But after playing it the whole way through, I clearly needed a lot of time to let the entire thing sit in. There was a lot to process, and I didn't know if I wanted to call the story in its entirety the best or the worst in the series as seen, because it was definitely one of the two. But after thinking on it day after day, and as you can tell by the title of the video, Danganronpa V3 was absolutely brilliant along with its weird quirks. And I could go on and on about every little thing this game does, but I decided to narrow it down to 5 main things that ultimately make this game fantastic in terms of its narrative. I'll try not to take too long, but as I normally do, I tend to get excited whenever I talk about games and shit. So let's start things off. If there's one thing I can confidently say about the Danganronpa fanbase, it's that it's very split on Danganronpa V3. One of the biggest reasons is this game's pacing, but clearly I think that's one of the better parts of the narrative. V3 is a game that takes its time over the course of the story. There's a lot of build up to every murder, and it takes a while for anyone to actually die. Hours are spent developing the characters, introducing conflicts, establishing motives both to survive and potentially kill off a cast member, and because of that I ended up caring a lot more. In the previous games, I did care whenever someone died because those games still got the information through to the player and kept things moving, but here you can do a lot more. There are multiple plot lines happening at once, the world building is a lot better, and characterization goes through the fucking roof. Everything gets so much bigger because of the extra time spent. Not only that, but trials become that much more powerful. The game's very complicated, but it's also very thorough. Every mystery gets solved, the trials and the drama they entail get that much more impactful, and everything just feels a whole lot better. Like, for as much as I love Danganronpa 2, I still don't know how or why victim number 4 was killed, and that bothers the hell out of me. Again, because of the pacing, I left the game satisfied. I was challenged the whole way through, teased even, at every little crazy thing going on. But I found out everything, and it all felt so right. You're fed everything at a great pace. I feel like the last Danganronpa games tend to give you the biggest plot twist all at the last chapter, and it gets a bit too much, especially in the second game. Honestly, some of the biggest twists could have been so much bigger and more powerful if I was given it at a more reasonable pace. Here though, the exact opposite. I was understanding everything, and those mindfuck plot twists were that much better. The story is like the female orgasm, a slow, wonderful climb to a beautiful climax. What the fuck? The characterization and cast in general were all near perfect. I love this cast so much. Danganronpa is no slouch when it comes to writing great characters, but it was especially great here. Partially due to the game's pacing, but also because a lot of the game's story is time spent with the characters. Suddenly things are feeling more real. We have cliques now. Some characters don't get along as easily with others. Some characters start to develop feelings for one another. You can learn about their dreams and aspirations. It's so well done. And the thing with this game is that it doesn't lock a lot of the characters' backstory through optional free time events. I did Maki's free time events, for example, because I wanted to learn more about her character, but they touch on a lot of her in the main plot, same with everyone else. The free time events are just extras, and guess what? That's how it should be! There's a lot to analyze, yet I'm still given a lot to work with from the start when I meet these characters. They're also fun, interesting, and I love that so much. By the way, Kaede and Maki are the best girls in the game, and yes, that is objective. It also made for much better murders, because caring about these characters so much really did a number on me whenever they would fucking die. And when a main part of the Danganronpa universe is murder and death, you know you're doing something right when the characters escalate that to a T. For those of you curious, I'd say that my favorite characters are Kaede, Shuichi, Maki, Kokichi, and Tsumugi, but I also really love Kaito, and Kibo, and Miu, and Ryoma. See what I mean? Speaking of murder and death, that's also some of the best it's been in the series. Yes, I do realize how bad that sounds, but hear me out. Trying to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, I won't spend too much time here, but every death is shocking and well built up on their own right. No one is safe here, and that's shown to you right from the first damn trial. They catch me off guard, but looking back, you notice how well built up they all were, and how much they impact the characters and the narrative as a whole. And those executions? Can't show them, obviously, but let's just say that after the first one, I needed to put the game down and cry a bit. I realized then and there that these kids were fucked. The deaths in the previous games are great as is, especially in the second game, but here, there's so much more mature and fucked up, which is what I want out of Danganronpa. It's what I asked for and more, so of course it strengthens the plot. The main theme of the original game was hope versus despair. How even in the worst situations, you can never lose hope because the best is yet to happen. Extremely cheesy, I know, but it worked for what it was. In the second game, the main theme became forging your own future, and there I much preferred that. But even still, the secondary theme of hope versus despair kept creeping up to the level of the main theme. Again, I much preferred the theme of forging a new future, so that was a bit disheartening in all honesty. But here, this game isn't connected to the other two games, so we're given a new main theme of truth versus lies, and that's way better of a theme. It's a lot more mature and so much can be done with it. The audience is challenged with the questions of, is reaching the truth always the best option? And are lies always a bad thing? Along with so much more. You're given a lot of tougher questions, and even at the end of the game, you aren't given a definite answer crammed down your throat. You even get to see the theme brought up in a lot of the game without getting too in your face, like the theme of hope versus despair did in the second game. And then the game's second theme, belief versus logic, is great in its own right. While you're pondering the questions that come up with the truths versus lies, you're simultaneously being asked if it's better to believe in those in the same situation you're in, or completely rely on the facts to get through the game's mysteries. And with a series like this, that's so genius because these are legitimate questions that work well with the premise of the game's story, and that can be applied to life. It's so, for lack of a better word, brilliant, and was probably the biggest contributing factor to making the story as great as it was. Not to knock the other games down or anything, but this theme compared to the other themes is like comparing chocolate with carrots. Both are good in their own right, but given the choice, you know damn well I'm gonna get that fucking chocolate. I'm trying to work with the analogies if you couldn't tell. Don't worry, I'm not gonna spoil it, I'm just gonna say this. I know that this ending has split the fanbase through the freaking center, but I think that the ending is absolutely brilliant because it works perfectly well with literally every point I've made in this video. I'll go more into this another day, but it's an ending that could only work with Danganronpa, and that, combined with the points I made in this video, made for an ending perfectly fit for a story as well written as this. All in all, Danganronpa V3 was consistently smart from the prologue all the way to the epilogue with everything it tried to do, and I loved it. So much was done right, and I was left extremely impressed. In terms of the story, this is the best in the series, no questions asked. It was weird, it was thorough, it was dramatic, but above everything else, it was fucking brilliant. I'm pretty sure this is gonna be the last game we get from the series, so if it is, and we have ourselves a nice little trilogy, I think this would be the best way to finish the franchise off.
There's no